Rome, 1997. A man boards the overnight express to Milan. He carries a leather briefcase, a British passport, a ticket purchased 3 hours earlier. MI6 surveillance teams watch from 3 positions. They've tracked him across 4 countries in 8 days. This man isn't British. He's a senior operational commander for Hamas. And inside that briefcase are financial documents that could expose an entire terror-funding network stretching from Gaza to the Gulf states. But here's the problem. They're on a moving train in a neutral country with no jurisdiction. And in 6 hours, he'll cross into Switzerland, where MI6's reach effectively ends. The clock is running. To understand how we got here, we need to go back. The Oslo Accords promised peace between Israel and Palestine, handshakes on the White House lawn, hope for a new Middle East. Hamas rejected it completely. They viewed any negotiation with Israel as betrayal. Their response was violence, coordinated bombings across Israeli cities, buses, cafes, markets. By 1996, the death toll was climbing. Israeli intelligence, the Mossad, was hitting back hard, targeted assassinations, phone bombs, operations that made international headlines. But Hamas had learned to adapt. They moved their command structure outside Palestinian territories. Senior figures relocated to Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. They communicated through couriers, human messengers carrying encrypted notes, cash, instructions. No phones, no emails, no signals intelligence could track. This is where MI6 enters the picture. British intelligence had assets throughout the Middle East, banking connections in London, surveillance capabilities Mossad couldn't easily deploy in Europe. And they had motivation. Hamas was recruiting British Muslims, fundraising in Birmingham and Manchester, using UK financial systems to move money. A quiet partnership formed. Mossad shared intelligence. MI6 provided European coverage. They called it Operation Bramble. The target's name was called Mashal, not the famous Hamas leader, but a logistics coordinator who shared the surname. His job was simple but critical: move money. Hamas needed cash to operate. Weapons don't buy themselves. Fighters need salaries. Martyrs' families receive payments. The entire organization runs on a financial engine that requires constant fuel. This Khald was a trusted courier. He traveled under false identities, carried encoded financial records, met with donors across Europe and the Gulf. MI6 had been watching him for 7 months. They knew his patterns. He traveled by train, never flew where passenger manifests could be traced. He changed hotels frequently, paid cash, never stayed more than 2 nights anywhere. He was disciplined, careful, paranoid in all the right ways. But everyone makes mistakes. In September 1997, an MI6 asset in a Beirut bank spotted a transaction. $50,000 wired to a shell company in Rome. The signature matched financial documents previously linked to Khald. The pieces connected quickly. Rome wasn't the destination. It was a stopover. Khald was meeting a donor, collecting cash, then moving north into Switzerland, where banking secrecy laws made the money untraceable. MI6 had 72 hours to position assets. Surveillance teams deployed across Rome. They couldn't risk hotel interception, too public, too many witnesses. Italian authorities weren't briefed. This was a black operation. Officially, it wasn't happening. MI6 needed him isolated, vulnerable, somewhere they could act without exposure. The train became the obvious choice. Overnight express routes offered privacy, sleeping compartments, long stretches through countryside where mobile signals dropped, hours of controlled environment before crossing into Swiss territory. An MI6 case officer traveled on the same train, compartment 3 cars behind. 2 support officers boarded as a married couple, seats in the dining car. The plan was elegant. Photograph the briefcase contents, copy whatever financial documents existed, let him continue to Switzerland believing nothing had happened. Clean intelligence gathering, no confrontation, no international incident. That was the plan. The train departed Roma Termini at 21:40. Cald was in a single sleeping compartment, first class, door locked. The MI6 team waited until after midnight, most passengers asleep, corridor empty. The case officer approached with a master key, obtained through an Italian railway contact who asked no questions. The door opened silently. Inside, the compartment was dark. Cald lay in the bunk, apparently sleeping. The briefcase rested on the floor beside a small table. The officer entered, 2 steps, reached for the case. Cald's eyes opened. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Cald lunged for the briefcase. The officer grabbed his wrist. A brief, silent struggle. Both men knew shouting would bring conductors, police, exposure neither side wanted. Cald was smaller but desperate. He twisted free, reached inside his jacket. Not for a weapon, for a phone. The officer tackled him into the bunk. The phone clattered to the floor. They grappled in darkness, trying to stay quiet, trying to avoid what this was becoming. The briefcase fell open. Papers scattered across the compartment floor. And then the door burst inward. The support officer, the one traveling as half of a married couple, had heard the commotion. She entered to find her colleague pinning Cald against the bunk, both breathing hard, the compartment in chaos. They had seconds to decide. Let him go, lose the intelligence, compromise the entire operation. Or detain him, which meant kidnapping a foreign national on Italian soil, creating a diplomatic nightmare, possibly triggering an international manhunt. The lead officer made the call. They secured Cald's hands with plastic restraints, gagged him with a pillowcase, gathered every scattered document. Then they radioed the 3rd team member in the dining car, package secured, proceeding to contingency. The contingency plan was never supposed to activate. At 02:15, the train made a scheduled stop in Florence. It would pause for 8 minutes, enough time for passengers to disembark, others to board. The MI6 team had that window. They moved Cald through the corridor as if assisting a drunk passenger, his jacket pulled over his bound wrists, the gag hidden beneath a scarf wrapped around his face, as though he was ill. Other passengers were asleep or looked away. They exited onto the platform. A prearranged contact, an Italian intelligence officer operating off the books, waited with a vehicle. Cald was placed in the back seat, the briefcase secured. The train departed on schedule. By morning, Italian authorities would notice nothing. The compartment would be empty, the bed unmade. Railway staff would assume the passenger disembarked early. No alarm, no investigation. Officially, nothing had happened. Cald was held at a safe house outside Florence for 4 days. Not torture, not violence, just interrogation. MI6 officers worked through the briefcase contents while specialists questioned him about Hamas financial networks. He gave them nothing. Trained in counterinterrogation, ideologically committed, he understood the intelligence game and refused to break operational security. But the documents told their own story. Account numbers, transfer records, coded donor lists connecting Hamas funding to sources in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, shell companies in Cyprus, money laundering routes through Turkey. It was an intelligence goldmine. On day 5, Cald was released. Driven to the Swiss border and let go. No charges, no publicity, no explanation. He called his Hamas handlers immediately, reported the incident, described the British officers, confirmed the documents were compromised. Hamas went into immediate damage control, changed accounts, altered financial routes, warned donors. The network they'd spent years building had to be dismantled and rebuilt from scratch. But the intelligence, MI6, gathered that night would fuel operations for the next decade. Operation Bramble remained classified for years. British and Israeli intelligence used the seized documents to map Hamas' financial infrastructure. Banks were pressured, accounts frozen, donors exposed. It didn't stop Hamas. Organizations like that adapt, survive, find new methods. But it hurt them, made fundraising harder, forced them to operate more carefully. The operation also revealed something about modern intelligence work. Sometimes the most valuable targets aren't leaders. They're the logistics people, the money men, the couriers nobody notices. Call disappeared from intelligence radar after 1997. Some reports suggest he moved to Sudan. Others claim he retired from Hamas operations entirely. MI6 never confirmed or denied the operation officially. The only evidence it happened comes from declassified Mossad files released years later, heavily redacted, mentioning European railway interdiction and financial intelligence cooperation with allied services. And one other detail: a British intelligence officer received a commendation in 1998. The citation was classified, the operation unnamed. But those who know, know. The overnight express from Rome to Milan still operates. Tourists book sleeping compartments. Business travelers work in dining cars. The route hasn't changed in decades. Most passengers never know that once, in the darkness between cities, an intelligence operation unfolded in those narrow corridors. No gunfire, no explosions, no Hollywood drama. Just 3 officers, 1 courier, and a briefcase full of secrets that changed how the West tracks terror financing. In the world of intelligence, the most important battles are the ones nobody hears about. The ones that happen on trains crossing borders in the night. The ones where victory isn't measured in bodies, but in information. And sometimes, that information saves more lives than any weapon ever could. This documentary script is based on historical intelligence operations and geopolitical context. Specific operational details have been dramatized for narrative purposes while maintaining historical authenticity regarding counterterrorism intelligence methods during this period.